Okay, let's get started. You know that feeling, right? Where past difficult stuff kind of hangs around.
Oh, yeah.
Like it doesn't just stay in the past. It almost feels like it sets you up for more negativity, especially when you're, anxious about something coming up.
Totally. It's like those old experiences
Yeah.
create these tracks in your brain.
Mm,
And sometimes they only lead back to worry or fear. It's super common.
right. Our brains are trying to help, I guess, learning from before, but sometimes they get stuck on the bad outcomes.
Exactly. Fixated. And that creates those thought loops that just go round and round.
Huh.
Feels impossible to get off sometimes.
Absolutely. So, what we want to do in this deep dive is look closely at a personal reflection someone shared. It's about how they very consciously tried to break those patterns.
Yeah, how they work to reshape things, move towards something more, well, positive.
And the source we're digging into today, it's a piece called Rewiring Negative Thought Patterns Through Faith. So, the author kicks things off, describing exactly that feeling, being sort of swallowed up by the past, stuck in those negative thoughts.
They use a really concrete example too, don't they? About this dread building up before a work meeting.
Yeah, a big one. With our boss's boss, you can almost feel the anxiety coming off the page.
You really can.
Yeah.
They talk about being caught in this old worry habit. The negative self-talk sounds pretty intense.
Like what were they saying to
Well,
themselves?
visualizing, messing up, stumbling over their words, being totally unprepared, imagining that awful feeling of shame afterwards.
Ugh, yeah. It's like watching a disaster movie in your own head.
Exactly. And that's the thing about anxiety, right? It doesn't just feel bad. It actively creates these little internal films of failure.
Feels so real in the moment, too. But okay, here's where it shifts in the piece. The turning point wasn't just feeling the dread.
No, it was more active than that. It was about consciously noticing it, stepping back almost.
Right. They talk about observing the negativity and having this realization like, wow, this is actually really wasteful.
Yeah, wasteful and destructive. And that moment of clarity seems to be what sparked the decision to try and change the story they were telling themselves. It wasn't passive at all.
It was a choice, an active choice to interrupt that cycle.
Mm.
So what did they actually do? The piece details some methods, right? Like an internal shift first.
Yeah, they talk about practicing positive self-talk
Mm.
actively and consciously visualizing different outcomes.
Not just hoping it goes okay, but actually picturing positive scenarios.
Exactly. Instead of letting the worst-case scenario movie play on repeat, they deliberately imagined other ways it could go, and quite specific ways, too. Like picturing the boss asking about difficulties maybe, but in a helpful way.
Hmm.
Or imagining the boss was just preoccupied so the pressure was off. Or even just having a normal, constructive conversation.
So creating different mental paths towards things going okay or even well.
Precisely. Building those alternative possibilities in their mind.
Okay, so that's the sort of mental cognitive part. But the title mentions faith. How did that come in?
Well, alongside that internal work, they describe using a faith-based approach. It involved noticing the negative thought, actively stopping it.
Like putting up a hand mentally.
Sort of, yeah. And then consciously choosing to surrender the worry, handing it over to a higher power, to God as they describe it.
Yeah.
It involves saying a simple prayer, maybe chanting affirmations, really focusing on redirecting the mind away from the fear, towards calm, towards clarity.
So it wasn't just thinking differently, but also this element of release, letting go.
That seems to be a key part of it, yes. A kind of spiritual practice complementing the mental effort. It suggests tackling these deep patterns might need, effort on a couple of different levels, cognitive and something else.
Makes sense. So putting these together, the positive visualization, the stopping, the surrendering what happened with that actual meeting they were dreading.
Well, the piece describes a real shift. The nervousness didn't just vanish, but it changed. It became more like manageable excitement, a different energy.
And the meeting itself.
It went smoothly. And there was this interesting moment of validation the author mentions. The boss's opening remarks were actually about creating a safe space for discussion.
Wow. So the complete opposite of the disaster they'd been visualizing.
Exactly. Quite a powerful outcome described there.
So if we kind of zoom out, what's the core takeaway here? The main lesson from this person's experience for, anyone listening who gets caught in similar cycles.
I think it really highlights the power we can have, or at least the potential power to intervene in our own thought patterns, even when they feel really strong and old.
It's about agency then, not just being swept along.
Yeah, I think so. It suggests that combining these deliberate mental techniques like the positive self-talk and visualization with some kind of practice for letting go, for surrendering the worry, whether that's through faith or mindfulness or something else, can actually help build new, more positive pathways in the brain.
It's something you can actively work on, not just something that happens to you.
Right. You can participate in shaping that inner world.
So connecting this back to you, the listener, this deep dive really suggests that your thoughts, especially maybe those fear-based ones that seem rooted in past events, they don't have to dictate your reality now.
Mm-hmm. There's space to challenge them.
Definitely. Which leaves us with something to think about, maybe.
Yeah.
How might just consciously observing your thoughts like the author did, just noticing them without immediately buying into them, and then maybe intentionally trying to shift your perspective, perhaps using some of these ideas, how might that start to cultivate a different kind of inner environment for you?
You mean beyond just handling stressful meetings?
Exactly, like fostering more growth or peace or resilience inside day to day. It really suggests that potential for change is, well, it's always there if we choose to engage with it.